Israel and the lobby have a deep-seated interest in making sure that the United States is militarily involved all over the world because they want an American military that's at the ready if Israel gets into trouble. So whenever you talk about restraint, like the Quincy Institute in Washington talks about restraint, this raises the hackles of the lobby.
John Mearsheimer's timing couldn't be better. When he made that statement on Tucker Carlson's show, which was just published yesterday, the Free Press also published something. Their piece, titled "Exclusive, Will the US Deport Trita Parsi?" is very much in line with what John Mearsheimer said in that video. Because it turns out that Trita Parsi is the co-founder of the Quincy Institute and has been a target of the pro-war Israel defenders for a while now. And what's really concerning is that there appears to be a campaign to get Trita Parsi deported from the United States because he has the audacity to call for restraint in our foreign policy. I'm not kidding. So we're gonna get into some of the excerpts here. It turns out that the war-thirsty Zionists surrounding Donald Trump have Parsi in their crosshairs, and that's what concerns me the most. Because if you look at who has been targeted by this administration already simply for protesting the genocide in Gaza, simply for having a last name that makes lunatics like Laura Loomer think that these individuals in America are somehow related to military generals in Iran. These are the people that the Trump administration has deported, has tried to punish. And I believe them when they say that they're gonna go after Trita Parsi. So here's what we know based on what the Free Press is reporting in their exclusive. And gee, I mean, really ask yourselves, how did the Free Press get this inside look into what the administration is planning to do when it comes to a man who co-founded an organization that's trying to, prevent us from all of these foreign entanglements that has destroyed our country? We're drowning in debt because we've spent trillions of dollars fighting Israel's wars in the Middle East. But okay. Jay Solomon, who wrote this piece in the Free Press, says, in the eyes of some inside the Trump administration, Parsi isn't just another Washington pundit eager to share his point of view. The State Department has launched an investigation of Parsi and could try to deport him, according to US officials and documents reviewed by the Free Press. Parsi was born in Iran, grew up in Sweden, has lived in the United States for over 25 years and holds a green card. So I didn't know that Trita Parsi had a green card. I thought he was already a US citizen. This is concerning because Mahmoud Khalil, the Columbia University student who was involved in the, anti-war protests. Remember, he was a green card holder. He was targeted by the administration. He was imprisoned by the Trump administration over his protests against the slaughter campaigns Israel's been carrying out against the Palestinian people. He wasn't able to witness the birth of his first child because he was behind bars, a political prisoner in the United States of America. So apparently, that Secretary of State we have, Marco Rubio, who I think is better referred to as Tremendo Come Pinga, is involved in this. So the secretary has been very clear, said a Trump administration official, about Secretary of State Marco Rubio's efforts to combat Iranian influence inside the US. Iranian influence inside the US? So hold on, let's pause for a second. They consider it Iranian influence if you happen to be advocating against wars. If you happen to be advocating against wars on behalf of a foreign country, by the way. Interesting, good to know, good to know. But let me give you more. Let's put that back up again. So they say, anyone who seeks to undermine the United States, we're taking a hard look at. That includes people who support adversaries of ours and whose work furthers their agenda and undermines our security. I'm gonna go ahead and say this as an American citizen who's protected under the First Amendment of the United States Constitution. I support Iran over Israel. I do. Iran is not engaging in slaughter campaigns in multiple countries. Iran didn't go out of its way to overthrow leaders of sovereign nations in order to turn them into failed states, much like Libya, or turn them into countries that are now led by former Al-Qaeda terrorists, as is the case in Syria. Israel has destroyed the Middle East, all because they want to expand their borders. So if I'm doing a comparative analysis here, which country do I think is better in the Middle East? I'm gonna go with Iran. Come for me, Come Pinga, come for me. Just absolute garbage. The secretary has been very clear, said a Trump administration, I already read that. So last year, Rubio declared that the way the law is written, it allows him to personally determine that the alien's presence, by the way, aliens' presence or activities would compromise a compelling US foreign policy interest. That's a direct quote from Marco Rubio. Even when what that person says or believes is entirely legal, as is the case with Trita Parsi, by the way. Solomon then provides examples of others who have been targeted for deportations because they refuse to choke on Israel's nutsack all day. And so in April, the State Department said that federal agents had arrested the niece and grandniece of Qasem Soleimani, the Iranian terror commander killed in a 2020 airstrike ordered by Trump. The women are fighting their deportation and deny that they're related to Soleimani, story that we covered here at TYT. They're not related to Qasem Soleimani. And by the way, even if they were, why are they being punished for something Qasem Soleimani did in another country? Is there any evidence that they supported that, aided and abetted that? No, of course not. But it doesn't matter. They have the last name Soleimani, so they must be deported. Disgusting. But back to Parsi. So since its inception in 2019, Quincy, meaning the Quincy Institute, which he co-founded, had advocated scaling back the US's military footprint around the world. Oh my gosh, that's so terrible. And ending what it describes as Washington's forever wars in the Middle East. The think tank has also promoted a more accommodating approach toward traditional American adversaries like China and Russia. In other words, hey, maybe we don't need to gear up toward war. Maybe we find a way of working together. Maybe there could be a partnership, a give and take. Maybe through diplomacy, we can find a way to change some of the behaviors we don't like. But unfortunately, that's sacrilege here in the United States with this military industrial complex we have, with all the money and profits that flow from working class Americans to just a handful of executives over at Raytheon, Northrop Grumman, Boeing. You get the point. Palantir. Remember, there are real moneyed interests at play here. And then you have the Israelis who we're all supposed to be cattle for. And it has aggressively, as Solomon writes, pushed for the US to minimize its military support for Israel. Boom. That's the real issue here. That's the real issue. This is the reason why that Laura Loomer has made Trita Parsi a target. And if I know one thing about Donald Trump, he listens to lunatics like Laura Loomer. In 2024, many Iran hawks and Parsi critics were stunned when JD Vance, then a US Senator from Ohio, delivered a major foreign policy address at a conference co-hosted by Quincy and the American conservative. Parsi sat in the front row. See, I didn't know that JD Vance gave a speech at that event. And now I have a little more clarity as to why it is that the Israel firsters in America are under the impression that JD Vance is a dove, is an anti-war person. I don't believe he is. I think he wanted to position himself or brand himself as someone who is, because he's young enough to know how young conservatives feel about our endless foreign entanglements. But one of the other main reasons why Trita Parsi and the Quincy Institute has become a target is because the message of restraint has been appealing for Americans across the political spectrum. The Quincy Institute has provided an opportunity for people on the left and the right to work together toward anti-war means. And so Parsi is loathed by a faction of the Iranian diaspora who revel in the bombing of their homeland and the slaughter of the Iranian people. That's the reality. I know I'm supposed to say, oh, the Iranian diaspora, it's just a faction within the diaspora. I'm supposed to pretend as though they're concerned about the Iranian people, which is why they want to bomb them to death. Yeah, I'm not going to regurgitate their lies. Some Republicans and anti-regime activists have been pursuing Parsi for years. In 2020, Senators Tom Cotton of Arkansas, Mike Braun of Indiana, and Ted Cruz, all these Israel firsters, of course, said the National Iranian American Council, NIAC, a separate group that was started by Parsi in the early 2000s and supported diplomatic accommodation between Washington and Tehran, was amplifying regime propaganda in the US. So they literally sought a DOJ investigation into whether NIAC was illegally working as an unregistered foreign agent. It's amazing, right? Looks like Ted Cruz is worried about unregistered foreign agents operating in the United States. Not the Israeli ones, of course, but any organization that might be favorable toward the Iranian regime, which there's no indication, there's no evidence that NIAC was a foreign agent or is a foreign agent at all. It's just that it's one of the only organizations here in the United States that advocates for peace in the Middle East, as opposed to us constantly carrying out wars on behalf of Israel. NIAC called the letter by the US senators a McCarthyite targeting of an Iranian American civil rights organization and said it is a crucial voice for those who don't want war in their home country. But again, in the context of the United States, which is dominated and controlled by the warmongers, that's sacrilege. Parsi and the Quincy Institute are taking these threats seriously. So as the Free Press writes, the CEO of the Quincy Institute, Laura Lumpe, told their employees and financial supporters back in April that its chairman had agreed with her request to cover legal costs to prepare for, and if necessary, fight a deportation attack on Trita Parsi. The memo said that Quincy was in the process of retaining an immigration lawyer who had advised that we immediately prepare a writ of habeas corpus to have at the ready if Parsi were suddenly detained by immigration officials. So you tell me, does this sound like a liberal democracy? Are we living in a liberal democracy? Are we really protected by the First Amendment? I mean, in theory we are. But if you upset the precious, war-thirsty, bloodthirsty Iranian diaspora that wants their homeland bombed, you'll be a target. If you don't want to do the bidding of Israel, you'll be a target. They'll censor you, they'll destroy your livelihood. And if you're unfortunately merely a green card holder as opposed to a naturalized American citizen, they'll try to find a way to deport you. Here's the thing. I mean, if the United States and Israel were confident in what they're doing, if they genuinely believed that they were doing the right thing and they had the people backing them in what they're doing, I mean, certainly the Israeli people back all of this chaos and slaughter. That ain't our country, but I want to talk about my country. I lost my train of thought because it's just such it's an infuriating story, but it just shows you how you have to fight to protect what we are supposed to have in terms of liberal democratic values. Because the second you become too complacent, our government will try to find ways to violate your rights. And that's what they're trying to do right now to Trita Parsi. And his grave crime, again, is that he calls for peace. I don't know. I don't know what's gonna happen. I'll stay on the story for any future developments, but you guys have seen Trita on the show. I was co-hosting with him yesterday. He is the most mild-mannered, calm. All he calls for is, first of all, he does analysis that's accurate. But aside from that, he talks about what the options are to get to a place of peace. And nothing offends the Israelis and the US war machine more than that.
Every time you ring the bell below, an angel gets his wings. Totally not true, but it does keep you updated on our live shows.